Hey, today, another dollar store blaster build. Why not? Let's go. Hey, how's it going? Anthony Ferraro here at Great Sci-Fi. Well, another dollar store blaster build because I and you love dollar store blaster builds. And look at that one. I went by the most beat up, terrible looking dollar store, and I went in and I found this. And it was actually 2 for $5, handle, adult size, really cool detail, hard, crisp. And I was just like, you know what? This is a really good candidate for a dollar store blaster mod. What I'm thinking is a lot of you guys send me pictures of your kit bashing and your blasters and all that sort of stuff that you've done from watching the channel, which I love, but people DM me on social media. I don't really check that much, you know, and I created a Gmail just for this channel. I don't know why it took so long to do that. But it's on the channel page. I'll put it in the description. It's greatsci-fi@gmail.com, right? So from now on, when you do that sort of thing, if you want to share with me what you've done or have a question or whatever, send it to that email. And full transparency, also through that email, I'll be collecting emails. So obviously I feel if somebody's emailing me to share, they'd be happy to hear about stuff in the future if I'm emailing the email list, right? That's a thing. So to kick it off, what I think I'm going to do is a week from whatever the date is that this comes out. This is the second one. Just email me at that email address, and you know, within the week, how many ever emails I get, I'll just randomly select one, and I'll send you this gun and see what you can do with it, right? And again, broken record, but so yeah, moving forward, if you want to email like, oh, check out this spaceship that I made from your video or this blaster, send it to that email. And last bit of housekeeping, and as you know, just sold one today. So I've been putting a lot of these props and stuff on eBay. As an example, from like a couple years ago, here's this dope Star Wars mashup that's on eBay now, and that's the kind of stuff that's on there, signed copies of the book. But we're not here to talk about all that. We're here to modify blasters from the dollar store. Let's get into it.
All right. A 2-4. One of those could be yours. Just email me. All right. So looking at it, like I said, I like the Christmas of it. The Christmas. Crisp with a P. So yeah, I mean, it's obvious what I got to cut off, but that barrel thing, I'm like, I don't like the 4, but I like the internals, how it's got that like depth to it. So I'm just going through my scrap plastic, and I'm thinking, yeah, just like maybe a little border around that, you know what I mean? It's just styrene. Styrene's a great little material. You can get it at hobby shops, on Amazon, of course, if you don't have local hobby shops. And, you know, like I talk about, you know, simple, keep it simple, you know. I'm just going to wrap this around, probably use a little heat, a little glue, and just taping this down to the mat. I don't know, like, you know, I've talked about this on the channel, you know, full transparency, you know, like straight lines, clean paint jobs, all that's, you know, I'm not good at that stuff. So I need this to be straight. So I tape it down because I know it'll want to walk, you know. So again, you know, I just like to share that stuff with you guys because it's like, you know, I've been doing this a long time, but I'm not like, you know, some kind of expert at this stuff. I just do it a lot so you get better, right? Like anything else. So now I got my plastic. I'm going to start addressing things that have to be cut off, and it's really just this. So what happens is you pull back that lever and you put the like kind of like Nerf gun darts in there, and it shoots them away. So I'm just chopping this off and pull the trigger, boom, that recesses in. And what you can't tell here is that it's rattling around in there. Not the piece that I cut off, but like, because this is a cheap toy, like springs and stuff are rattling around in there. So I could just take it all apart, but instead I'll address it another way, you'll see. And this I want to cut off. I don't know. This is just an aesthetic thing. I don't know why it bothers me, but it's like, I don't need a barrel sight if I have a scope, I guess. But again, no big deal. Files, sanding discs, sanding sticks and just get rid of that little detail. And taking a look at it, so now I have this big hole in the back. I could plug it, but instead I'm like, well, because I'm doing this styrene work, let me just put a little something over that. I know, again, from experience, that will be a better solution than just like filling like the pinholes and the screw holes. To fill those with filler is great, but when you start getting it into the larger holes, it's never the best way to go about it. So I'm just going to create a little cover for this, and then it's going to add like an element to it, right? Because that's a flat surface, and we have like all these different geometric patterns on this blaster, so let's lean into that. Now I'm going to bring back a technique that I picked up from Adam Savage over on Tested, and you see these nippers. So I did a scratch built spaceship a while back, and this is something Adam Savage shared. It's like an ILM thing for the Star Wars ships. Just adding these little nips on the end, and it just gives it a little interest. Very simple. Again, this is not something you'd be focused on. So about all that stuff rattling around in there, so I just fired up my hot glue gun, and I'm just dripping a whole stick of glue in there. And it also adds to give it a nicer balance in the hand, right? It gives it like a little bit of that dead weight, like a dead blow hammer kind of thing. There's super glue, just squirt it all over my hands. And here, I don't know, I got this super glue from the Harbor Freight, and I don't know, it doesn't like set up right away, so I've been just using these disposable paintbrushes to get better coverage. I prefer the other glue, but again, this is what I have on hand. I'm trying to not be wasteful. And here I'm just gluing it. I think off camera my two fingers were glued together, and you see there, that's a nice little solution. And it's, you know, I'm giving it the weight test. It's got the weight, going with my sanding sticks. And these sanding sessions are more just like thinking about it. So here I'm using the notcher, not for notches for visual interest, but just to notch around this sight that's on the top of the barrel, just because I want to wrap it around, and I'd like it to look like it's form fit around those barrels. And yeah, good, got it. Little super glue there to tack it down. And then this is not a hairdryer, this is the heat gun, and I'm just going to heat up. That's what's great about this styrene. You know, it cuts really nice and straight and snaps off, and then when you want to mold it, you just heat it up, and we're going to be able to bend it right around these barrels. And here I'm going to overbend it and then just like sneak up on a tight fit. I've noticed in these situations where even if I measure it precisely, it's always weird gaps, so I found it's better to just sneak up on it. So here I'm just sneaking up on the fitment, and right, just like about a millimeter, eighth of an inch at a time. And yeah, and then I guess off camera I did film it. I used hot glue to put that down, just because it also helped to sort of fill in those gaps of the peaks and valleys of the four barrels next to each other. And then there, I'm doing the same technique that I did on the back of the gun to the squirt gun hole. And I just have these scrap pieces of styrene left over from when we wrapped it around the barrels. And here I'm just making like little patterns. Again, not really overthinking this. And I'm just going to add like a 3D texture, right? I'm going to stack up, I think I ended up stacking like 3 layers of this. And it's just going to give it visual interest, but what it's really going to do is when I do the weathering paint job, the darker colors are going to go in there, and it's going to reflect light differently, and it's going to look cool. Instead of like, you just don't want that blank, 3 or 4 inches of plastic there, because that won't look good. This, you only notice it because I'm working on it and calling attention to it, but I think if you didn't watch this video, there would be a nice element of this on the gun, but you wouldn't give it a second thought. You would just think, oh, that's a cool looking gun. So this is just model kit glue. Whenever I'm working and 100% styrene. I prefer to use this glue because it's not really glue. It's like a chemical that basically just melts the plastic perfectly, and it's more akin to welding than it is gluing. But, you know, again, you could just use glue. When I have the stuff I hand, I use it. When I don't, I improvise, right? Something to think about. So there's my magic welding glue. And I think you could see, even there with like the light reflecting, right? You could see what I was talking about, how it just gives it more interest, and then it ties it in to the rest of the gun. And I like when the barrel swings around and then it's got those 4 recessed with the little dots in the middle of them. So I think that's cool. That matches the rest of the gun better. The weight is good. So now I got to square this up because that's got those round indentations. And the only way to get it square, is with my book. You can use my book as a square, or you can read it, check it out to see why I do this stuff and my philosophy behind all this low budget stuff. So yeah, link below, check it out. So now I just have my stick files, my hand files, my nail files, my dollar store files, my sandpaper. I find that when you have these odd shapes like these blasters, the nail files, right, the emery boards, those sort of things just make better work of it. So here I'm just toothing up the holes, scratching them up because I'm going to be putting a filler in there, and you want to just make sure it has something to grab to, right? Otherwise it's just slick plastic and it's not going to work. So lately I've been using the plastic wood filler for this. I mean, if you follow the channel, you heard me say this enough times, but it's worth repeating. So this is a blaster. This is like a hobby one, cosplay display, or like maybe for a character. And when I do my films, right, it's like typically just shooting for a couple days because it's a short film. Now, if this was a budgeted, we had a budget, and I was doing a feature film, I would probably fill these holes with Bondo. But that's a longer process. I find for this sort of work, the plastic wood filler is nice. And what I like about this one is it goes on pink, and when it dries, it's like a beige, like wood color. So you know that it's dry and you can get after it with the sanding. So here I'm just trying to take my time filling these holes. You know, it's pretty straightforward. I'm just filling in screw holes. But the only like cosmetic filling I need to do is on the side there where I covered up those barrels. Like I said, there's like those little divots. You see there's like 4 of them, so I just wanted to fill that. And then you can see now it's starting to turn beige, right? So I know it's ready for sanding. And this, I just go through it. I use the palm sander to 220 to get off all the chunky bits. I usually don't use a heavier grit with this putty because it'll just put you know, sanding streaks in it. So finer grit sandpaper is better. And I probably would have used something higher than 220, but 220 is kind of like the best, I think, catch-all to have. I always have 220 around. Other grits I usually have to purchase, but 220 is a pretty good grit. So here I'm just going through again with the different sticks and the air and the sanding and the more sanding, and then now I'm getting towards the end. I take the sandpaper off the palm sander so I can just sort of get around all these different curved surfaces. And, you know, with your finger on it, you're also getting a feel, blowing it off with the air. And then now, as I wrap it up, I always go, I use a Scotch-Brite, and I'll probably use some steel wool. And that's just to make sure that every speck of this surface is gotten toothed up a little so that it'll accept paint better, because paint doesn't want to stick to these. So I've been using this like plastic bumper automotive adhesion promoter, and this is my base color of black, and that adhesion promoter, it works pretty good. Like paint will still rip off, but I think it does help. And there, the wire, there's always a wire on there because I'm always painting and hanging. So now with the wood filler, it shrinks up a little. Then I use like the traditional body filler. This is the glazing putty. This is just for like the pinholes and scratches. Now I do, this is already mixed, but what I found is because I keep this stuff on hand, maybe it sat around for 4 months before I used it. So I just want to stir it up a little, make sure everything's mixed. Because it's like a little watery and greasy when it comes out of the tube because it's, just been sitting there on the shelf. And then there, just filling up those holes. And that's sort of like the last pass. Now here's my arsenal of sanding twigs, sanding little rods, actual nail files from the cosmetic section, hobby store little files, 220 grit on the palm sander, and just put on a podcast, put on some music, and just go to town. And then you see there I'm sanding through to the plastic, but then that's because I'm using a little bit of force, so that shows you that that adhesion promoter is helping. Would I say it's like a slam dunk? No. Would I say it's better than not using it? Yeah, I would say that. And the reason I use the automotive one is there's some really good ones like Bulldog, but they're kind of expensive. So the automotive one I just get at the AutoZone, and I can afford it. And I try to stretch it out. I don't go crazy with it. I just put a thin coat. So that's me just telling you about my philosophies on painting plastic while I'm sanding, because we are always sanding. And you see there how like that little bit of red that's left that's where the dip was. And then here I didn't talk about it, but I just use this also to take care of the seams. Again, with these guns, the same thing with the screw holes. It's like if you can cover up the seams, that's always a good thing because the seams are a giveaway as well. So you see there on the top and the bottom there, I got those seams covered up. And here I'm just Scotch braying it. And then I'm going to put a final coat of flat black. And this is that Behr paint that's a little heavier duty than the cheap paint that I use for my base coats. And now, so what I want to do here, and again, this is just something from having done this a lot, this is something I've sort of, I want to say learned, but I anticipate. So what I want to do here is I want to pull out a few of these elements to break it up, and I'm going to use silver rub and buff, right? Not silver paint. Now, what I've known over the years, rub and buff will very easily get on one of your other fingers that you don't notice, and you'll hit something, and that stuff does not come off, right? So typically, I'll use the regular rub and buff. This is like from the hobby store, but it's all the same stuff. And here, see how I'm just wiping that on? So what would happen if I didn't put down the masking tape is, you see that little bit on there, like that goes off of the object? That would just be on your piece forever. And then if you try to wipe it off, it makes it bigger. So, live and learn. I just did this. If you're, you notice I'm a little bit shaky. So if you got like a steady surgeon hand, then don't mask it and go for it. And then now I'm buffing, right? So that's the buffing component of the rub and buff. And then, that gives it like a nice look. And then there, you see I even got a little bit on the barrel there, but I'm just going to lean into it and make it part of my weathering, which is fine. But, I don't have 10 instances of that, right? It's just the one. So now I'm going to do a silver dry brush. This to me, I do so many things on the channel, like graphite, like candy colors, like anodized colors. But my favorite, and I think the most effective, is just to paint something black and then do a silver dry brush. And I just feel like, for my films, for people who do it for cosplay or display, there's just something, right, that is super effective about this, and it's very easy to do. I'll admit, I'm a little too heavy-handed with it. I'm always working on that. And I was, as soon as I started this, I was conscious of it. I was like, hey, tone it down from what you usually do. And be honest, it got away from me, but it's fine. It looks good. I'm happy with it. Now we're putting some matte, and now we're going to start to do our layers of weathering and matte. And the reason we do the layers is we want to build up. We don't want to make everything just mud. But before I do that, I like to do my handles and the grippy bits with some Plastidip, right? So here I'm just masking it off. And Plastidip it gives it a rubberized texture, so it feels good in your hand. But what I like about it aesthetically is when you're just glancing at the gun, it reflects light differently than the paint. And so it gives you sort of a vibe of like, okay, there's something else going on there. And you can see there, see how it reflects differently? So now I just have this colored sheet. I've used, like those high school folders. What the heck are they called? Tell me in the comments, remind me what they're called. Trapper keepers? You can use those. I've used those before. So here, because the scope is just a hole right through, I just want to put something reflective and translucent in there. Again, all this stuff is not to be practical, to be like, oh, wow, here it is. This is a scope now. It's just visual cues, silhouettes, like subtextual things that if there was just a hole in there with nothing there, it would be distracting and it would look like, that's weird. But now because that's there, it's not a highlight of the piece, but it makes you not think about it's missing. Does that make sense? True story. So now I'm just going to wash the whole thing. As I always say, and I did it in the Light Bright video, you can stop there. But not me, my brothers and sisters, not me. I'm all in. So here, what this does, I don't know, it's kind of like, when they varnish paintings or, put matte over everything. It's like the wash kind of like brings everything to light. And I apologize, somehow there, my videos got out of order. I think I was starting to do, to full disclosure, I think what happened was I'm starting to do the wash and the weathering, and I was like, oh, wait a second, I need to address this scope. And that's what happened there. So a little behind the scenes. So here, I put on a very thin wash, and I've noticed that I do my wash so thin that it works better if I blot it and then hair dry it. And again, this is just like my technique that I've developed that works for me. And then I go in with the burnt umbers and that sort of, the siennas. This is like the rust. I go in there undiluted, careful to not overdo it. And then I find when I wipe it off like this, it leaves behind like a tint of like, this is old. And then I do my multicolor technique. Again, when we look at this under the light and the hero pictures and the thumbnail pictures, you're going to see like all these colors, but I'm always doing this with film in mind for like my films. And this little bit of color, you'll never pick it up, but it just breaks up the piece and it gives it like a visual interest that I enjoy. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's my thing that I do, right? I'm always on the fence of like, oh, well, I did that before. Let's try something new. And, I don't want to repeat myself. But I don't know. I kind of tend to think like you just refine and get better and better and better, and I like the process. So here, again, full disclosure, I'm always battling with like, okay, pull it back, stop there. And I always go a little too far. Again, it's fine, working on it. But this is cool, right? This is how thin this is. It's just, I always use this nicotine spray. Again, it's expensive. You don't have to use this. You could just use a wash. But it's like, I just wanted to illustrate there, like how water thin this stuff is. So it's not like heavy handed. And here's the beauty shots, right? Like I said, when you look at it like this, those colors pop. But I think it looks pretty cool. Again, you can agree or disagree. And then those barrels, I'm very happy with that. That's what I wanted there. I think they're more menacing. And then there's our little scope light, just to sort of make it look real. And yeah.
Oh, yeah. Very happy with that. And, the fact that we covered up these barrels, it makes it look cooler, right? Because, like, you have this profile, and then it's like, whoa, boom, 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 boom. There's the four things. Just that little piece of plastic in the scope, right? So it's like, Here's the thing that goes by. Your eye picked up that reflected, right? So that makes it cool. Grippy handle. So yeah, very cool. You know, like I said at the beginning of the video, if you're still watching, go to the email if you want to try to get this one. I'll send you this one so you can see. Yeah. So, oh, wait a second. I guess we should fire it up, right? Okay. This one is right there. Oh, yeah. All right, here we go. Whoa! It's like a Men in Black cricket. All right, one more. Well, as always, check out the Patreon, that helps. Check out the eBay sale. We got the email now, so you can send me stuff of what you're working on. But remember, at the end of the day, I'm just here to help make sci-fi.
Hey, I'm just the avatar, but you might want to check out this video, maybe that video. For sure, subscribe if you haven't, and check out the merch. Buy some merch, that really helps. But hey, what do I know? I'm just the avatar.